Mr. Millett, I understand
Yes.
you want to see Miss Jabin back.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to recall Miss Jabin. There were one or two very short topics I just wanted to cover with her, which I should have covered, and I inadvertently didn't.
Ms. Jabin, I'm sorry that we've had to ask you to come back again.
Okay.
But I don't think it'll take very long. Please consider yourself still under oath.
Yes, I'm going to ask the Chairman and the witness whether it's necessary to re-swear Miss Jabin.
I don't think so. I think she understands the position.
Ms. Jabin, I'm sorry to ask you to come back, and I hope I haven't inconvenienced you. There were some questions which I'm afraid I overlooked at the very end of your evidence. The first question is this. After the Grenfell Tower incident was over, was there a debriefing session in the Northwest Control Room about the incident?
Yes, there was.
Can you tell us how soon after the incident that happened?
I can't recall exactly the date, but it was within the first few days of Grenfell. I would say maybe 2 or 3 days after.
Did you attend it?
I did attend, yes.
Do you remember whether it was documented in any way, whether the meeting was recorded or
I'm sorry, I can't recall.
Okay. And casting your mind back to that meeting, can you tell us, to the best of your recollection, what the takeaway messages were, lessons learnt from the incident?
I'm not, to be honest, I can't recall that we had any feedback. Majority of the time was discussing, so we all discussed what sort of calls we'd taken, how we'd pass the messages to London. But whether there was any feedback at that time, I don't recall.
As a result of that control debrief, do you remember whether there were any decisions to improve or change the systems in place at Northwest?
In the aftermath of Grenfell,
yes.
I think Northwest Fire Control taking calls for maybe Manchester high-rises, the predetermined attendance was increased just for the high-rises, I believe.
Any other changes that you remember?
Not that I recall, just that the predetermined attendances were changed.
Right.
So there was a greater attendance and a special appliance mobilised at the same time.
Right.
There is, again, a floor chart we can use as soon as we identify it's a high-rise to establish how many floors there are, what floor the fire's on, etc.
And just going back to your memory of the debrief meeting, what was the main focus of the meeting in terms of how the control room at Northwest acted on the night? Do you remember?
From what I recall, the feedback was quite positive. I don't recall any negativity. At the time, Northwest Fire Control did all they could to assist in answering the calls or passing the details to and fro to London Fire Brigade.
Right.
But other than that, I don't recall any sort of negativity. All in all, we believe that it was handled as well as possible, right, given the circumstances.
Okay. Can you just tell me who is currently the operations manager in charge of the Northwest Control Room?
We have a number of operations managers. Do you mean a senior operations manager?
Yes, I do.
That would be Tessa Tracy.
Tessa?
Tracy.
Tessa Tracy. Tracy as in T-R-A-C-E-Y.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Okay, one more topic. Just to go back to the call with Debbie that lasted for 40 minutes, or just close to 40 minutes we looked at this morning. You recall, and we looked at the summary, that after a period of time, she told you that the window was being cracked because of fire.
Correct.
And that's something like 20 minutes into the call, or just over. Is the risk of fire spread due to the passage of time during a call one of the factors which you as a CRO would take into account when evaluating the kind of advice to give?
In this scenario, I couldn't possibly comment because I didn't know what Debbie was up against or what any of the trapped callers were. I couldn't possibly comment.
Right. Let me just see if I can get it this way. During a long call, and it
Yeah.
may be the first one you've ever done, so perhaps your experience is limited, but would you think that you would have to keep listening out for changes in smoke conditions, fire conditions, heat conditions, so as to modulate, change your advice off the back of that?
Again, it would depend on the individual circumstances of the call. So if they told me that it was getting smokier or if it was getting hot, then the advice might change, yes. But in that circumstance, on that night, the only advice I could give her was from what she had told me.
And casting your mind back to your training on handling FSG
Yes.
calls, is that kind of monitoring, listening out, changing the advice in response to changing conditions, something that you were trained to do?
Changing advice is not something that a control room operator would instigate. That would come from the fireground.
Okay, but in terms of the advice to the individual caller as to how to keep themselves safe, would that change as you got further and better information about the conditions in the flat? Right. And you were trained to do that, were you? Just
Yes.
to press the point, you were. Okay. As part of your initial training, when you first
Refresher
started?
training, initial training gives you the basic guidelines of what fire survival guidance is, what the reason why we use fire survival guidance, at what point we would use it. During refresher training, you would touch up on if it was a more complex call, but as I say again, it's something like that you could never train yourself for.
Right. Did you have any specific training on how to listen out during long calls for changes in conditions?
Not particularly. It's based on the circumstances of the call and the information that you get at the time.
Right. And when Debbie told you that fire was cracking the windows, did that trigger anything in your mind about how to change the advice or change the kind of help you were giving her?
I did tell her to get out of the flat immediately. Unfortunately, she couldn't. So my advice at that point would just have been further fire survival guidance because she couldn't get out.
Right. Yes. Thank you very much. Mr. Jabin, I have no further questions, further follow-up questions, I should say, for this witness. So that's all I have.
And you're confident that there are no other questions that are going to be suggested?
Yes, I am. Exactly,
All right.
yeah.
Well, Mr. Jabin, thank you very much. I'm sorry, as I say, we had to keep you here longer than you might have wished, but you're now free to go. You should go and catch a train while you can. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, our next witness is CRO Control Room Officer Angela Gotts.
Yes, thank you.
Should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Very good. Thank you very much, Ms. Gotts. Sit down, make yourself comfortable there. Right.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gotts.
Good afternoon.
Can I please ask you to start by giving us your full name?
Mrs. Angela Gotts.
And would you prefer me to address you as Mrs. Gotts or Miss Gotts?
Mrs. Gotts.
Mrs.
Or Angie.
Right. Can I just say, first of all, thank you very much for attending today and helping us with
Sorry,
our...
I can't really hear you very well. Is it me?
Right. I'll try and speak up. Thank you very much for coming today and assisting us with our investigations. We're very appreciative of that. If my questions are too long or you don't understand them or can't hear them or you want me to ask it in a different way, I'm happy to do that. If you want to take a break at any stage, I'm also very happy to take a break. We can do that. can I ask you first to look at your statement, which is MET quadruple 07694. And that's the statement that you gave to the Metropolitan Police on the 11th of October 2017.
Yes.
Can I ask you, have you read it recently?
Probably back in June.
Right, back in June. From what you recall of your rereading it, are its contents true?
Yes.
Have you discussed your statement or the evidence that you're going to give to the inquiry today with anybody before coming here today?
No.
Right. Now, can I start with your role at LFB? You're a control room officer, a
Yes.
CRO, and you've been a CRO, I think, since 1981.
That's right, yes.
Right. And you also say in your witness statement, and I don't think I need to show you, that you could also take on the role of radio operator.
Yes.
And you monitor the standby module, which organises all the stations across London. Is that right?
With a firefighter cover, yes.
Firefighter
Personnel
cover.
yeah.
And is it right that you undertook both of those roles on the night? So module, standby module and CRO?
Yes.
And after calls started coming in from Grenfell Tower, I think you stopped doing standby module and concentrated only on taking calls.
I think I'd finished standby module about midnight.
Right. Okay.
Oh no, maybe I think I was doing that between 12 and 1-ish
Okay.
and stopped then.
Right. Now, Mrs. Gotts, you completed your training to be our CRO when you first started. That's what you say in your statement. And could you just tell us what was that training?
What, when I initially joined?
Yes, very briefly, if you can remember.
The radio procedures,
Right.
call taking, getting the correct information, and also updating appliance availability.
Right. And that was a course you did when you first started, is it?
Yes.
Right. And that was in 1981?
Yes.
Between 1981 and June 2017, did you have any further training?
On new systems,
Right.
a couple of fire survival guidance training sessions.
You did. When were those? Do you remember?
2010 and 2012.
And who delivered those? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
And looking at the 2012 one, was that in response to the fire at Lakanal House?
Yes.
It was. And were you trained specifically on policy 790, fire survival guidance calls?
I believe so, yes.
Right. And what about policy 539, emergency call
Is that
management?
Call handling, yes, that's...
And what about what we call the reference information files, which I think you've referred to in your statement? Did you get training on those?
No, you just know sort of how to look those up.
Okay. Did you, at any stage, ever receive any specific training on how to handle 999 calls from a high-rise residential block?
It sort of comes under the umbrella of the fire survival guidance training. I don't think in that training session it was discussed, particularly as high rise as we were talking about that night, but certainly blocks of flats, I would say.
Have you ever had any training on or advice about how to gather the best information you can from a 999 caller?
Well, it's the same as every single 999 call that you would take, would be the same.
What about when a call becomes an FSG call, fire survival guidance? Have you ever had any training on how to extract the best information from someone in that situation?
Not specifically, really. It's, obviously, a lot of calls that we take are people who are in stressful situations, so
Right.
it's all the same, really.
Now, the 2012 training that you said was in the aftermath of the Lakanal House fire, what was your main takeaway from that specific training session? Do you know? Can you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Have you had any specific training in evacuation strategies?
Not that I can remember.
How to help the incident ground evacuate?
No.
Have you had any training in what to do when the building has only a single emergency exit route?
No.
So would it follow that you've also had no training on what advice to give where the single exit route is smoke logged?
No, not that I can recall.
Right. Now, in your statement, we can look at it, it's page 4. In paragraph 2, which is below halfway down, you say, in my experience, I have dealt with a few FSGs, but not many, perhaps only 4 or 5. And you say you were present at Lakanal. And you go on to describe that experience. When you say 4 or 5, is that 4 or 5 at a single incident, or 4 or 5 in a total of 31 years?
Probably a total of all that time.
Really?
Yes.
So that's an average of 1 FSG call every 6 years in a 31-year career?
Yeah.
Did your training ever cover what to do if numbers of FSGs rise beyond 1 or 2?
No.
Even after Lakanal House?
Not that I remember, no.
Do you remember what the number of FSG calls that you handled at Lakanal was?
FSG, I had 1.
You had
from
1?
Lakanal,
Right.
yes.
Okay. And after Lakanal House, were you involved in the review done by the LFB of the LFB's response to that fire?
No.
You weren't. Were you aware of the conclusions in a report that the LFB produced?
I thought that it was mentioned that we should have plans more of the buildings. But apart from that, I can't remember. I did read the report at the time, but I can't remember specifics.
Right. So when the report came out, which was in 2012, you remember reading it? Let me show it to you.
Well,
Let's see
I
if it...
followed the inquiry, to be honest, rather than, I think.
Right.
I just seem to remember that it was advised we should have plans, but
Right.
I'm not sure where I've got that from.
Okay. You said you read the report. Let me just see if we're talking about the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask you to be shown HOM quadruple 01124? This is a report produced by the LFB dated November 2012. Is this the report you remember reading?
Sure.
It's quite long.
Yes, no, I'm not sure.
Okay. Let me see if I can take you to some conclusions. If you go to page 50, please, in that document. I'm not going to grind through every paragraph with you, but just looking at paragraphs from 293 to 296, headed expectations that callers will be rescued and stapled advice, escape alternative escape routes, assessment, reassessment of the caller, effective communication between control and incident command. Those 4 paragraphs. Do you remember at any stage reading those?
No.
No. Did you ever get any training post-Lakanal on any of those 4 topics? Take your time to scan your eye down them again.
Sorry, what was the question again, please?
My question was, having looked at those 4 topics there, did you ever get any training after Lakanal on any of those that you can remember?
It may have been mentioned in the 2012, I'm not sure.
Right, okay. As an experienced CRO, what do you think, or what do you remember changing, if anything, in the control room as a result of Lakanal House?
Just on a personal
Yeah.
thing. I suppose that after Lakanal I realised that people aren't always rescued, and it made me very mindful of...
Right. So when you say that, do you mean that the assumption that crews would always reach callers was not always reliable? That's your personal takeaway, was it? Right. Okay. Did that change, and I know we're not talking about very many FSGs, but did that change the way you did or would handle an FSG call after Lakanal?
Well, no, another one I had, the people were rescued and it was a successful outcome.
That's an
The
FSG.
one I think I've said in my statement, when they've got their heads out through the skylight,
Yeah.
they were rescued.
I see. Okay. Now, on page 4 of your witness statement, which we're still on, at the foot of that page, you say normal advice for calls to high-rise buildings has always been to stay And this is based on the understanding that the construction of the building should allow about 1 hour's grace in which the fire is contained and should allow plenty of time for the caller to be rescued once the firefighters have attended, which usually takes between 4 to 5 minutes. Just to see if I can understand your understanding of stay put, can I ask you please to be shown policy 539, which is tab 3 of our policy bundle, and go to appendix 3. This is on page 16. Appendix 3 is headed Fire Survival Guidance, and a third of the way down, 3 paragraphs down, it says, Brigade control advised callers to get out and stay out. However, if a call is received from a high-rise building where fire, heat and smoke are not affecting the caller, LFB would advise that, and then it says, you are usually safest to remain in your premises unless affected by fire, heat or smoke. If the situation changes, you should leave your premises and dial 999 if you need further assistance. And there's a quote mark at the end there. My question is that advice what you understand by the stay put advice?
Yes.
Yeah. And was that your understanding on the night of the fire?
Yes.
And so would it be right that your understanding is that you're usually safest to remain unless you're affected by fire, heat or smoke?
Yes.
How would you, and speaking generally, in your experience, go about determining if a caller's premises are affected by fire, heat or smoke?
How do I go about?
Yeah, how would you go about determining whether the premises are affected?
Well, from what they tell you, really.
Right. And what sort of information do you need to make your own assessment as a CRO about whether those premises are affected by fire, heat or smoke? What information do you need?
Just forgive us. I think have we got a problem with the microphone? Too close? Too far away?
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, shall I ask the question again?
Yes, you
Okay. We're looking at the question whether or not premises are affected by fire, heat or smoke. And my question is, you as a control room operator with your many years of experience, what information do you need to get from the caller to be able to make the assessment as to whether the caller is affected?
Well, I presume they don't exactly always know where the fire is, so it's very difficult to work that out, really.
So how do you go about getting that information?
The fire survival, as I said to the pit, that there was no choice that, with the ones I was telling you about, with the head with out the skylight, there's smoke billowing up from below, and they could not get out at all.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to know what direction the smoke is coming from, where would be safest to go.
Are you reliant entirely on what you're being told by the caller as when you make your assessment about whether the caller is affected by fire, heat or smoke?
Well, first of all, I suppose we're going by the calls that we've received, previous calls, and if we've had any informative messages.
Right.
So I'd also use that.
Right. Would you also use, in addition to informative messages, information that you were getting from other CROs in the control room around you?
In some situations, yes, but on that night,
Okay.
there's too many calls.
Well, we'll come back.
Couldn't
we'll come
hear
back to that.
detail.
We'll come back to that. You mentioned informative messages. They come from the incident ground.
Yes.
How often would you expect messages to come from the incident ground which would update you so as so as to enable you to assess whether the particular caller was affected by fire, heat or smoke?
I'm not familiar with the exact timings. That there is a they are supposed to send them every so often, but I'm not sure the timings of that.
What other information would you expect to come back from the incident ground, apart from information in informative messages?
Or assistance messages.
Assistance messages?
Or stop messages if they've dealt with the fire.
Right. What's an assistance message? Can you just help us?
Would be a make-up, like make pump 6, 8, 10.
Right. In making your assessment about whether it is safe for a caller to stay or whether they're affected by heat or smoke or fire, did you ever get any training whereby you would use information which you didn't get from the caller but from elsewhere, either in the control room or from the incident ground, and use that information?
No, I've never had training on
Never
that.
had training on that?
I mean, no, I haven't had training on
Right. Now, on page 6 of your witness statement, if we can go back to that, you say that you say that and this is the top of the page. I'm trying to find the right place to introduce it. The top of the page, in the middle of the incident, you say, I remember thinking, oh my God, this is worse than Lakanal. That's at the very top of the page. And then in the first main paragraph, you refer to the fact that a friend of yours was blamed for advice at Lakanal that she gave, and that's all set out there. And then you say, the blame was all put on her. This is in the middle of the paragraph. And then you say this, since then I have not been comfortable with telling people to stay put in their flats. I will tell the caller what I can, and I will certainly pass all of their details, flat number, floor number, number of people and location, to the firefighters, but I will not tell them to stay. I would assure the caller that firefighters know exactly where they were, but it was to be their own personal decision as to whether they decided to stay or go. It was not a decision I would make for them. Now, I just want to just understand that a bit better. When you say you weren't comfortable telling people to stay put in their flats, what was that a view that you had on the night of the fire?
Well, not. I mean, I think it's not worded terribly well, but after I heard make pumps 25, I knew that something had happened, and I didn't know where the people were in relation to the fire. The way the fire was spreading, I just didn't know it was for them better for them to stay or go. I just couldn't make the choice for them.
No, we'll come to that, because that answers, in general terms, a question I've got in a few minutes' time. But before we get there, Mrs. Gotts, can I just ask you in general terms, when you say since then, since Lakanal, I've not been comfortable with telling people to stay put in their flats. My question really is this. On the night of the Grenfell Tower incident, was that discomfort that you describe in your statement something that you had then?
Yes, it was. But until make pumps 25, I think I was telling people to stay in their flats.
Okay. What do you... I mean, are we to understand from what you say in your statement here, and if it's wrongly worded, then please say, but are we to understand that you think the advice is generally wrong?
No, I'm just not... Because of it didn't work out too well at Lakanal, I'm not going to... I'm not comfortable. I wouldn't say I wouldn't tell them to stay, but I'm just not happy with him myself because of,
Right.
things that happened before.
Right. Is that feeling that you had about giving people that advice something that you ever raised with senior management in the LFB?
No.
No. So this is just a personal feeling of your own? You kept it yourself, did you?
Yes, I just felt terrible inside.
Yeah. Okay. And you also say, in the same paragraph when I've read it to you, that you would assure the caller that the firefighters know exactly where they are. And you say it was to be their own personal decision as to whether they decided to stay or go. Was that your own personal practice at the time of the Grenfell Tower fire? That you would always assure the callers?
I didn't feel I could decide for them.
Right.
And I know I was alone in that, but I just could not.
When you say I would assure the caller that the firefighters knew exactly where they were, was that an invariable practice of yours at the time? You would always say they know where
I
they are?
hope so.
Right. Would there always be an information basis for giving that assurance?
I always passed the information on to the fireground.
Yeah. But when you assured callers that the firefighters know exactly where they were, as you say,
I tried to. I hoped I did.
But my question is, would you give that advice even though you didn't have any factual basis for knowing that the firefighters knew where the callers were?
Well, the information was being passed over to the fireground, so...
Does that mean that you would always assume that the firefighters would know where they were as soon as the information was passed over to the fireground?
Well, yes.
Right. Even after...
Can I just... what I'm understanding from what you're saying is that whatever information you got, you passed on to the fireground. Is that what you are intending to say? Now, does that meet your question, or are you putting a different question?
But assuming that the information was passed on to the fireground, would you also then go on to assume that it had been acted on by the crews, so that crews were actually going up to rescue people? Yeah. You would. And is that so even after your own personal lesson learnt at Lakanal, that the assumption that people would always be rescued, if I've understood this right, wasn't necessarily correct?
We've always got to hope they're going to be rescued.
So it's a hope?
Yes.
Now,
well, again, I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, Mr. Millett, but am I right in understanding that you passed on the information, you assumed that it would be acted upon, and you hoped that the action would be successful?
Yes.
But in the circumstances, you couldn't tell whether it would be or not.
No.
And you may or may not have been told whether it was or not. Is that all right?
Yes. You may not have been told whether it was or not, but in those circumstances, and we'll look at some examples in due course, but just generally, I want to get a feel for your practice. You would give the assurance, is this right? Because you knew the information was passed to the incident ground, you hoped that it would be acted on. If I summarise this fairly, because if I haven't, somebody will complain. But you didn't know that the crews were there or on their way when telling people that...
I knew they were on scene, but,
right.
So that was all we could do at that point, I thought.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a feel for, when you say in your statement, I would assure the caller that firefighters know exactly where they were. Just trying to get a feel for how confident you were that was actually happening when you gave assurances to callers.
Well, I don't definitely know, but because I'm not on scene, but
right.
That was what the expectations
That's what the expectation was. All right. Now, at the top of page 4 of your statement, you explain what an FSG call is. And you say, it's very short, an FSG call is a call in which a caller has said that they are trapped and cannot get out. Now, just to look at the policy, if I can I ask you please to be shown policy 790? And to turn in that, please, to paragraph 2.1, which you'll find on page 2. And it says, an FSG call is received into control where the caller believes that they are unable to leave their premises due to the effects of fire, and where the control officer remains on the line, and that's in bold, providing appropriate advice. The call continues until either the caller is able to leave by their own means, is rescued by the fire brigade, or the telephone line is cleared. It should be noted that a caller may clear the line after the FSG process has commenced, but that will not necessarily mean a cancellation of that process. Now, when it says in the second line there, first and second line, unable to leave their premises due to the effects of fire, Well, what do you understand that to mean, due to the effects of fire?
Well, the effects of fire is the smoke, so they're unable to leave either due to fire or smoke.
Right, okay. And is it for the CRO to determine, in your experience and understanding, is it for the CRO to determine if a call is an FSG call?
Yes.
It is. And what information would you use to assess whether the call had become or had started out as an FSG call?
Well, when they tell you they can't leave property and it's being affected by smoke or fire.
Right. So it's the key information that they think they can't get out. That's what makes it an FSG call, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Now, if we look on in the policy, to paragraph 8.1, on page 5, it says, advice to fire survival guidance callers. Control officers will always use the 4 principles of escape, assess, protect and rescue to provide guidance to FSG callers. And if we look down the page, the requirement is first to assist the caller to identify a safe alternative escape. That's 8.2. Firstly, by assisting the caller to help identify a safe alternative escape route for them to leave their premises. Now, that's the policy. In your experience, Mrs. Gotts, how do you know, how do you find out whether there is a safe alternative escape route? What do you do to find that out?
I didn't remember that part of the policy.
On the night of the fire?
No, I didn't remember about finding out about an alternative escape route.
Did you not?
No.
Right. Did you use the RIF on the night of the fire?
No, it's too busy.
You're too busy. Did you remember the contents of the RIF in general terms?
General, but
Right.
it was just, we were overwhelmed with calls.
Sure.
There was just 20 calls waiting at all times.
Sure. In the normal case where you haven't got multiple calls, would you normally be able to use information about the caller being trapped coming from other sources, or would you only ever rely on what the caller was telling you?
Sorry, would I rely on the caller for...
Would you ever rely on other sources of information
Okay.
other than what the caller was telling you about whether it was safe for them to get out?
Okay, well, normally on an FSG call, you have a supervisor or another colleague come over. So that does relieve quite a lot of the pressure because it's quite pressurised dealing with those calls.
Right.
So if you've only got 2 or 3 FSG calls in, you can have a colleague with you. It's very difficult typing, listening, being aware what else is going on in the room, all at the same time.
Yeah.
So if there was only 2 or 3 FSG calls at a time, we could apply the policy to the full, probably.
Right. So, because this may save me a bit of time, are you saying that in general terms, with all the calls you got on the night, you didn't go about examining safe routes of escape where the callers were telling you they were trapped?
No.
Even though it was in policy 790 and
I
in
didn't
the RF?
remember. I didn't remember that part of the policy.
All right. The RIF, was that easily accessible to you on the night of the
I
fire?
think it. If you put, as soon as you type in another address and the map goes up, it then disappears all the time.
Right.
So it's a matter of re-clicking on it.
Now, you said a couple of times that you didn't remember that part of the policy. Did you also not remember, well, let me ask it differently. Did you remember the part of the policy that requires you to go into the next stages, reassure, or reassess, and then rescue?
Well, the calls were lasting about 90 seconds each because of the multiple numbers coming in. So, no, I possibly didn't go into as much detail as maybe I would have on another occasion.
Right. Now, going back to your statement, Mrs. Gotts, you say at the top of page 4, very top, in the event of an FSG, there are certain things we have to do. For example, we have to inform a supervisor immediately, usually by waving our hand, so they can listen to the call as well. On nights, however, this is not always possible because our team numbers can be smaller. Is it the invariable practice with FSGs that you would always raise your hand and get a supervisor to listen?
Yes.
Did you manage to do that on the night of the fire?
No.
Did you try to?
Everyone was overwhelmed with work.
Even at the start?
Yes.
You refer to the team being smaller. You say it's on nights like, however, it's not always possible because our team numbers can be smaller. Was that a problem on the night of Grenfell Tower?
Well, there was 11 on duty that night. Sometimes they run on 9 or 10.
Right.
And I think they're looking to drop the number to 10 anyway.
Now, so team numbers being smaller wasn't itself a problem, is this right?
I think
On that night?
with 11 you can do 2 or 3 FSG calls at a time and perhaps keep to the policy.
Right. Right. Now, also on page 4 of your statement, a third of the way down the page, you say, and it's about halfway through the first main paragraph, it is also very important that we get how many people are reported to be inside and have that information passed over. The collection of names is not something that would be routinely done. In such calls, speed is of the essence, and what we really need to know is the address, where they are, and how many people are inside. So you've got those pieces of those 3. Would you say those 3 were the most important? Address, where they are, and how many people are inside when collecting details from callers?
Obviously, yes, the address where they are in the building. How many people inside? I mean, that's probably the, yes, I would say it's quite important, but the address and where they are is the most important.
And why is it important to have all that information?
So the firefighters know where to go.
Right. Now, can I just take you back into policy 790, and I'm sorry to keep jumping in and out of it, and ask you to go to page 3, paragraph 5.5. It says there, we can look at it together, Mrs. Gotts, Control will attempt to gather all the information on the control information form and relay this information to the incident as and when it becomes available. And then you've got 8 bullet points on the shopping list. Number of flat house, number of persons involved, location of caller within premises and access point, condition of their location, e.g. heavy smoke, light smoke, proximity to fire if known, latest advice given by control, time of FSG call and time updated. Do you, usually, when you've done FSG calls in the past, do you usually try to obtain all that information?
Yes, obviously in a high rise as high as that night, proximity to fire, if not, is not.
Right.
The poor people didn't know where they were, where the fire is, for us to work out their proximity from their point of view. Everything we do is timed anyway.
And let me just...
and I think the condition of their location, the heavy or slight smoke, is down to an individual's interpretation of the amount of smoke.
Yes. And would you interrogate the caller? Well, interrogate's perhaps a strong word,
No,
but would you investigate with the caller what kind of smoke they were experiencing when they called?
If I didn't have 20 calls waiting, maybe I'd possibly...
Right, I see. Can I just ask you to look at the Fire Survival Guidance Operator, what you call the reference information file, which I think you said you didn't have in your mind on the night of the fire. If you go to the last page, there's a reference under paragraph 2.3. to a similar shopping list of information to be collected. And it's the last page. That's it. And under the rubric 2.3 control information form, you get a similar shopping list, premises number, name of caller, etc. And then at the bottom, it says any additional information, if provided or requested from incident, other information may include age, gender, and capability of those involved. Would you normally ask questions of an FSG caller about whether or not they had mobility issues, or they were elderly, or they had children present?
In all my experience, people normally volunteer that information.
Right.
It's not something I don't think I've ever needed to ask. They tell you, and yes, I would ask, or maybe explore that if we only had 2 or 3 calls to deal with.
Right. In your experience prior to Grenfell Tower, do you remember ever handling a fire survival guidance call where you asked questions such as, are there any elderly people or children present, or people present with mobility difficulties?
My call at Lakanal, the lady told me she was disabled.
But she volunteered that, did she?
Yes, she volunteered
right.
that.
Is there a reason why you don't actively go out and ask for that information, so as to assist you build a picture of the caller?
Well, as I say, if we only had 2 or 3 calls coming in, we can deal with all those points. But when you're overwhelmed, as we were that night, I think the calls were lasting 90 seconds each.
Yes. Would it not be, I'll put it differently, would it be an important matter for you to know when deciding how to give advice, or what advice to give, to know whether there were children or elderly people in the particular flat who were trapped?
The firefighters would rescue whoever they found in the flat. They wouldn't. They would rescue them, everybody they could.
Right.
The way I,
yes.
also see it, I understand others may need more help, but on that night, time was pressured.
If you did get information that somebody had mobility issues, or were bedbound, or elderly or young, would you pass that on to the fireground?
Yeah.
You would?
If, as I say, but if you've only got 2 or 3 calls coming in, yes, and then you get into more of a conversation with the callers.
Right. And just sticking with the RAF for the moment, it says on page 3, under paragraph 1.6, in the middle of the page, record advice, and this is under the rubric of protecting caller providing FSG, and here's the advice: explore possibility of caller moving to a safer room, etc. Record advice passed on vision and communicate to IC, including the premise number, unique identifier of caller. Were you aware on the night of Lakanal that you should be doing that, recording the advice that you were giving on vision and sending it to the IC?
I think a couple of calls that I took, although I may have passed the information, they didn't duplicate quick enough. And so whilst they were still, I made sure the information went across, there may have been a couple of calls that didn't get accepted by the...
Right.
Because I had another call come in, so there may have been 2 or 3 that were not recorded on vision. That it was just pure trying to duplicate the call and not duplicating it in time for taking the next call. But I know that those flat numbers went over.
And how would that advice normally be communicated to the incident ground from the control room?
I'd create a service request, send it to the appropriate radio channel.
Right. So via radio?
Yes.
Normally? I see.
Yes.
I see. And would you also record information that you got from callers on a control information form?
on that night, I didn't have any control information forms.
No, but normally
No,
would
I've
you
never
do?
used one.
You've never used one?
No.
In 31 years
Don't
you've
think
never
so,
used
no.
Right, let me just...
I've seen them, but I haven't used one.
right, let me just show you what I mean so that we're talking about the same thing. Can I ask you to be shown FSG Policy 790, Appendix 2. This was the policy which was live as at the night of the Grenfell Tower fire. And Appendix 2 is there on the, is page 8. It's a quadruplicate information form, white, yellow, blue copy, green copy. Just to be clear, are you saying that you've never used one of these in your career?
They weren't on the table, they weren't at Stratford that night.
No. Would they be at Merton normally?
I think there are some on the desks, yes, I've never used one though.
You've never used one?
No.
Have you ever seen any colleagues using one?
I don't think so, no.
Right. Staying with Policy 790, that takes me to ask some questions about paragraph 9 on page 5. Communication with control. Paragraph 9.1 says, it is vital that control is kept informed of the actions being taken to resolve each FSG call. The fact that control is aware of the actions being carried out on the incident ground will greatly enhance the advice given to FSG callers. Normally, leaving aside Grenfell for the moment, would you expect to be kept informed of the actions being taken to resolve FSG calls from the incident ground?
I mean, at Lakanal, we didn't have anything. The only other one, I've said to you about the people at the Skylight, the stop message was received and it was mentioned. I knew they'd been rescued because I'd heard it. So until the night of Grenfell, I hadn't... I haven't been made, but I haven't really been in the situation where I would have been updated apart from Lakanal or Grenfell.
Right. Okay. I mean, this policy postdates Lakanal, I should tell you.
Oh, sorry. Oh, okay.
So this is a...
Oh, it seems... Okay.
So this was one of those things that was supposed, I think, we'll find out later,
no, I
to
don't.
reflect Lakanal House.
Only another time when I was on a radio when we had FSG calls, so I was in a different position.
Right. Well, let me ask you more generally. As at the night of the Grenfell Tower fire, were you aware of the principle encapsulated in paragraph 9.1, that it was vital that control was kept informed of the actions being taken to resolve?
I wasn't really aware of that.
You weren't? Right. Okay. Now, we saw, just worth going back a moment to paragraph 2.1 of Policy 790. And I showed you the words in bold, that where a FSG call is happening, the control officer remains on the line providing appropriate advice. You say in your statement, if I can just then turn to that, page 7, in general terms, that you would know if people got out. You say in the middle of the page, I know that some people got rescued. My question really is this. Did you, before Grenfell, did you ever handle an FSG call where you didn't stay on the line?
No.
Right. Now, at Grenfell, as we'll come to see, there were many, many calls where you didn't stay on the line.
Yes.
And therefore, paragraph 2.1 of the policy wasn't adhered to. Is there a reason for that, in general terms?
Just because we're overwhelmed with calls.
Now, I can tell, I think, against that background of your experience, to the night itself. and look, first of all, at the role and team structure on the night. Now, paragraph 1 on page 5 of your statement, page 5, you say, on the night of the 14th of June, we were working the night shift. And you say you think there were 11 CROs working along with 3 supervisors. Debbie Real, Peter May, and Alex Norman. In fact, I think we've established there were actually 8 CROs and 3, making 11 in total.
Yes.
Right. You say on page 5, a little lower down, that, in the next line, no one above the rank of OM was present. Mm-hmm. Is that usual? Is it usual that the senior operations manager is not present on a night shift?
No, no one above the rank of OM. OM is the highest rank on night duties.
I see, okay. So Alex Norman was the OM?
Yes, and that's normal for her to be in charge.
I follow. Now, we know that the control was working from the Stratford fallback, as you say, because of routine maintenance at Merton. Can I just show you a picture of the control room we've got at Stratford? It's page 175 of the control report, Paul. And there it is. Using that photograph, and we'll blow it up a bit more so you can see it more clearly. Can you just tell us where you were sitting on that night?
Opposite Alex Norman, in the middle bank, middle of the bank, opposite.
So we think we know where Alex Norman was sitting.
There's a red line going through the screen. I think that's where I was sitting.
A red line, what, from control operator
going through the
CRO?
screen.
Yes.
The middle bank there.
I see. So there are 3 arrows, left, middle, and right.
The middle arrow is going through a screen.
Yes.
That's where I was sitting.
So you were there on the left of the picture. That was your chair on the left.
Would it be easier if you just... Would you like to
up?
point it out to us? If you can.
That would be that's my screen.
Right. So your screen is not where the arrow is actually finishing, but the middle one.
Yes.
That one. Ah,
Oh,
right, okay.
thank you very much.
So pretty much immediately opposite Alex Norman.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And who was sitting next to you on your right?
Sarah Russell.
Sarah Russell. And on your left?
Sharon Darby.
Sharon Darby, operating the radio.
Yes.
Right. You say, in the same paragraph, the control room is much smaller than Merton. Was that a help on the night or a hindrance?
I think so. I think it was a help.
Because, why is that?
Because everybody sits so far apart at Merton. We work as a team, a lot of teamwork. I mean, so you could sort of hear, I knew people were talking about the 17th floor, sort of smoke travelling, so I was aware already of what was going on in the room.
Right. So you could actually hear what other people were saying?
Well,
on
not
the
whole
calls.
conversations, just snips, really.
Right, I see. Did you ever have any discussions between calls with your colleagues sitting either near you or even not so near you about particular calls?
Not discussions, no, too busy.
Too busy. You also say that you don't have access to the National Police Air Service downlink. There's no heli-tele link.
No.
Well, I don't say you say it. Sorry, it's in the control report, but that's right. I think there's no access to the heli-tele link.
No.
Would that have helped you on the night? Do you think?
I don't know, really.
Is that a tool you ever use as a CRO?
No.
It isn't. Right. So seeing the downlink doesn't assist you. Is that right? With the sort of advice that you would give a caller?
I don't know if it would have helped, looking back, really.
Right. Do you usually have a 24-hour news television feed at Merton?
It is normally on.
At Stratford?
Sorry, do we have it? It's normally on at Merton, but there wasn't anything on at Stratford.
No. And Do you know why the television wasn't running at Stratford?
No, I don't know.
Did you inquire?
No.
Would it be normal not to have it on at Stratford?
Yes, I don't think people are worried about having the telly on, really.
Right. Would it have helped, do you think, having a TV with 24-hour news showing during the night?
That particular night?
Yes.
I honestly couldn't say. It was quite late on in the night before I saw a picture of what was happening.
Right. Did anybody turn the television on at some point?
I don't think so.
Right. Now, on page 5 of your statement, if we look at it, in the middle, you say the night began like any other, and then you say, just below halfway down the page, I remember whilst walking out for my break, the initial call for Grenfell Tower. And I was aware of Pete May discussing the attendance required. Do you remember what he said?
He said something along the lines of, we had this the other day. And he didn't mean a call for Grenfell Tower. He meant that where the address had been put in, flat 16, Grenfell Tower,
Right.
then because that was the address, and we had an address record for 16 Grenfell Tower, it had taken off the high-rise attendance and made it, I think, 3 pumping appliances.
Right.
So he noticed that Grenfell was a high-rise and it should have a high-rise attendance on it, which I believe at the time was 4 pumping appliances. And Pete then manually put on the other machine, the other fire appliance, to make it the 4 for high-rise attendance.
And you go on to say, shortly afterwards, I heard a bang on the door from Pete May. He stated that there was a 10-pump fire and persons reported, and we needed to make our way back to the control room due to the influx of calls. You heard a bang on the door. What was the door he banged on?
Well, I think the recall hadn't worked.
The recall, what's that?
It's a button as soon as there's multiple or a major incident or multiple calls coming in, they press a recall, so anyone who's on break comes straight back.
Do you have a pager?
No,
with
it
you?
should be a buzzer throughout the building.
Right.
But I'm guessing that didn't work because he went down the corridor and I was getting changed and he banged on the door, said 10 pump fire, come back.
I see, okay. So he left the control room, came down the corridor, banged on the changing room door and hoiked you back in,
yes.
effectively. Right. After he called you back in, you started taking calls. Was that straight away?
Yes.
Right. Now, we've got a record of about 70 calls that you took between 1:26:27 and 6:14:47, and we haven't been able to identify any obviously long gaps or breaks. Did you take a break at any point during the night?
I went to the toilet once.
Right. I'm not going to try and work out when that was. At the early stage, did you record the information, at the early stages of these calls, as they started to come in, did you record the information you were given by the caller?
So I'm aware I was sending messages to Sharon on the radio.
Right. So just talk us through how you would do that. You'd get a call, and then what would you do next with the information that you got from the call?
Well, I would duplicate the call, so attach it to the main body of the incident log.
Right.
And then create a service request.
Right.
Head it up to Channel 4, so Sharon knew it was for her. First of all, probably would have addressed it to Gulf 271, but once a command unit gets in attendance, you'd head it up to them.
Right.
And then I'd pass, people are reporting, they're on the 8th floor or whatever floor.
And how was the information that you gave to Sharon Darby in those early stages passed to the incident ground? Do you know?
She passed it by voice.
Right. Did there come a time when you were aware that a whiteboard system was implemented?
Yes.
Who by? Do you remember?
I think it was the station manager. Olif was over in the corner doing that.
And on page 6 of your statement, we see you say something about that. You say, it was quicker to write the messages by hand. This is at the very foot of the page. After you refer to Jason Olif. it was quicker to write the messages by hand on pieces of paper than it was to type them and wait for the system to send. So I would write them and take it straight to the whiteboards. In the end, I think everyone was doing it that way. I just want to investigate with you a little bit about how this system worked. What were you writing on?
I had a large pad, and
Right.
I had the flat numbers, and as I was passing them over, I was putting a line through them.
I see. Okay.
But there was no way, once Station Manager Olif was running the whiteboard, there was no other way to give him the information because he wouldn't pick up the service request or anything like that. That was the most expedient way, really, of getting over to him, going over there and passing him the information that way.
Right. So were they on A4 pieces of paper or
Well,
smaller scraps?
I had a pad, and as I was telling him, I was putting a thin line through all my those flat numbers, and I was going over to him. Not after every call. I think I was having a few and then going over.
I see. Okay.
So I'm not sure whether he wrote them down on another piece of paper or some of them he already had on the whiteboard.
Right.
Quite a lot of them I think he already had on the whiteboard.
How did you know to use that system? Did somebody tell you to, or did
I
you
think
just...
it was just, pass all these calls to the station manager.
Right.
It was announced in the room.
Right.
I'm not sure. I just knew to do it.
Right. And how soon after starting to take calls did you start writing FSG information on pieces of paper and taking them up to?
I don't know.
Right. Was it immediately the whiteboard started, or sometime after that? Do you think?
Probably as the whiteboard started, I would think. I don't know what time that was, though.
Okay. And did that mean physically leaving your desk and going up to the whiteboards?
Yes, over to him. It wasn't far.
No.
Just,
Okay. But you have to leave your desk.
so you couldn't shout, or...
No. Did you have to take your headphones off and
Yes.
physically walk round to him, hand him the piece of paper, and then walk back again?
Yeah, it's a couple of steps, so it wasn't far.
Right. Okay. Do you think that system started before Jason Olif arrived?
I don't know.
You don't know. Now, we've heard some evidence from Jason Olif, and his time of arrival seems to be about between 1:50 and 1:55 a.m. So, and my question is, would that correspond with your recollection?
I really couldn't say. Be a
Right.
guess.
Okay. Were you able, do you think, to get sufficiently detailed information about the calls to Jason Olif?
Yes, the flat number's the most important, where people are.
Right. What about numbers of
Well,
occupants trapped and the conditions in flats? Did you get information to him about that, do you think?
No, not that I remember.
And disabilities, ages of occupants?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did you send any messages to Sharon Darby after the Olif whiteboard system was implemented?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Right. I'm conscious, Mr. Chairman, that we've been going for an hour, and
Yes.
these questions are quite wearing.
Yes.
Perhaps we should take a short break.
Well, would you welcome a break?
Yes,
You
okay.
probably would, wouldn't you? Yes. All right, well, we'll have a break. Can we afford to give ourselves 10 minutes?
Yes.
Right. We'll give ourselves 10 minutes or fractionally over. So if you'd like to go with the usher, I have to ask you not to talk to anyone about your evidence and so on while you're out of the room. Thank you, and we'll come back at 25 past. Thank you very much. Right, 25 past 3 then, please. All right, happy to carry on,
Yeah.
Mr. Gotts? Good.
Mrs. Gotts, thank you for coming back to us and helping us. You describe in your statement, and as you did before the break, that you come into the control room at the point when the fire is a 10-pump fire.
Yes.
Before that, am I right in thinking that you weren't involved in the Grenfell incident at all?
No, I was on the radio until 1 o'clock. I
Right.
think the call came in just before 1.
Right.
And then at 1 o'clock I went to break.
I see.
And then Sharon relieved me on the radio. And then, so when Pete called me, I was then call taking.
I see. How long are your breaks normally at that time of the
An hour.
night? An hour. Okay. Now, we have a time for make pumps 10 as 1:24:34. That's page 17 of the short incident log. I don't need to show you that. That's the time when it was made to 10, according to that. And so it would follow that you came into the incident, the control room after that, after 1:24 or so. Do you remember a person's reported message being made from the incident ground?
Yes, I do.
You do. What did you make of that? Did that mean anything to you?
That there were people on the fire ground, they were confirming there were persons reported.
Right. What does that mean?
There's people inside the building
Right.
needing rescuing.
You needed rescuing. Okay. And what did that tell you about the fire? The nature of the fire, the seriousness of the fire?
Well, even a small fire, you can have persons reported messages. So it didn't on its own wouldn't tell me the capacity of the fire, if you like.
Now, you then start taking calls, and we have the first call that you took at 1:26:27. There are 3 more, and then you take your first call from inside the tower at 1:30:38. And just in general terms, is that sort of timing, does that accord with your
Yes, it must be.
recollection?
If Pete called me at 10, make pumps 10.
Right, yeah, okay. And between coming back into the control room and taking your first call, do you remember what the acceleration of the make-ups was? How fast it was?
No.
You don't? Okay. Well, let me just tell you what happened. At 1:28, persons reported. At 1:29:53, make pumps 20. And at 1:31, make pumps 25. Do you remember that? Do you remember that speed of acceleration?
I can't put time on any of it, I'm afraid.
No, but do you have a general impression of...
I know it was
that's-
quick, I think.
What did that tell you about, what did that acceleration of make-ups tell you about the nature of the fire or its spread?
The fire hadn't been contained in its compartment, so therefore we've got quite a problem.
Got quite a problem. Okay. What kind of problem did you think you were going to have to be dealing with?
Well, probably residents. I think I knew by then it was quite a tall building, so I didn't know where the fire was going to go, so...
Okay. Now, on the top of page 6 of your statement, if you could just look at that, you say it all turned... Well, at the bottom of page 5, you say it all turned into a blur. I think I took a call from a man on the 8th floor and told him the fire was on the 4th and he would be safe where he was. He seemed to be happy with that information at the time. I think at some point there was an incident upgrade, top of page 6. I cannot remember, you say, if it was then a 15 or 20 pump fire, but I remember thinking, oh my God, this is worse than Lakanal. Now, at that point, when you had that thought, oh my God, this is worse than Lakanal, what did you think in terms of the scale of the fire or speed of fire spread at that point?
Well, obviously I only ever deal with these incidents from the office, not actually on scene, so it told me that this was going to be a huge incident.
Right. And at that stage, huge incident, did you have any concerns with the advice that you were giving or beginning to give?
Because the Lakanal thought was in my mind,
Yes.
I was very worried about, obviously, the people inside and what the best thing for them to do was.
Did you raise those concerns or worry with your supervisor?
No, we're too busy.
Right. Now, can I ask you to look at the control debrief notes, which you may not have seen before. This is LFB 3113. These are notes of a meeting which took place for a control debrief on the 24th of July 2017, and it doesn't appear that you were present at that meeting.
No.
So I'm not going to ask you anything about what happened at the meeting. But if you look at page 3 of the document, it says at the top of the page, calls coming in, stay put advice given, callers hang up and told to ring back if it worsens. Now, that is early on in the incident. Do you remember whether you were told to give that advice?
No, I don't remember.
Right. Were you told by anybody ever to hang up but not stay on the line once you'd established it was an FSG call?
Was I told by anybody?
Yes.
No.
Right. And then on page 4, and this is after 145, we can see just 3 lines down from the top of the page, it says, stay put, advice remains, block vents, move to other rooms, etc. People try to get out if they can, or told to get out if they can. As first question, control knew firefighters were being committed to rescue, expectation this would happen. Now, difficult with timing, but at or before 1:45, in that first 20 minutes or so you were involved, did you know that firefighters were being committed, or did you expect that would happen?
Just expect it, I didn't know.
You didn't know, okay. While we're on that page, just to prevent me having to come back to it, if you look at the foot of the page, and this is after 0206, so a little bit later, it says no info coming back from incident ground as to progress, stroke rescued, stroke flats cleared. Was that your experience, that there was no information coming back from the incident ground?
No, I wasn't told any, but...
Right. So you agree with this note, do you, that there was no information,
Yes.
to the best of your recollection?
Yes, I
from
don't
your
remember.
Right. Did you ever receive any information from the incident ground about the conditions within the building?
No.
Nothing? Nothing about fire spread, smoke spread,
No.
heat?
Nothing, no.
Were you ever asked to prioritise FSG calls in any way?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Do you remember being told or asked by anybody in the control room to indicate to indicate a priority by smoke density?
No.
You don't remember anybody asking you to find out what the smoke density was within a particular
No.
flat?
No.
Right. Can I just ask you to look at the control report, please? Turn to page 53. I think this is the first time I've shown you this document. This is a report published by the LFB recently, which is a minute-by-minute timeline of what happened in the control room. And at the top of that page, perhaps I should start at the bottom of the page. It starts at 1:49, and it's Yvonne Adams calling CU8 to hand over or pass over information. And at the bottom of page 52, so if I could just take you back to it, sorry, it's not on your screen. Bottom of page 52, which is where we should start with this. It says, the command unit operator, just so you're clear in your mind, Mrs. Gotts, this is at 1:49, so you've been involved in the incident for about 25 minutes or so. The command unit operator asks CRO Adams if there's a priority for the calls being passed to them, but asks control to indicate a priority by smoke density. CRO Adams explains that the call room 182 is quite panicky, and then over the page, has smoke in the flat and is still on the phone. the command unit operator summarises that the smoke is heaviest on the 21st floor. And my question, having shown you that, is, were you made aware that the smoke was heaviest on the 21st floor?
No.
Right. I want to ask you now, if I can, a few questions about some specific calls that you took. Now, first of all, in your witness statement, on page 5, and we saw this very briefly as we passed it a few minutes ago, go to the bottom of page 5, you refer to a call from a man on the 8th floor. And you say, I told him the fire was on the 4th. Do you remember any further details about this call?
No, I think I passed them information over via the radio to tell them that there was smoke on the 8th floor.
Right. We don't seem to have a record of that, but just I want to get your recollection. Do you remember what point in the night, or by reference perhaps to the level of makeups there were, that you took that call?
I think that was shortly after I returned to the control room.
Right.
I'm not sure.
At what point in the night did you think you were told that the fire was on the 4th floor?
The initial call.
You were still in the control room at that point, I think you said.
Yes.
Before your break.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it was an informative or if it had said that there was a fire on the 4th floor. I'm not sure.
Let's try and pin this down. I may have given you a false lead. If you go to the short incident log at page 17, let's see if we can trace this through. At 1:16:02, two-thirds of the way down that page, you can see an informative message. SUP from G272 residential block of flats of 20 floors, 25 by 25 metres, 5-roomed flat on 4th floor, 75% alight. High-rise procedure implemented, MDT in use, tactical mode Oscar. Now, at 01:16, you were, I think, out of the control room, because you only came in at pumps 20, when it was pumps 10, and we can see lower down that's at 1:24 or so. When you came into the control room, you went back to your station, did you look at the vision log?
Sharon would have posted that up on the service request lines, so it would be sitting up there, it would be headed up SUP, but I would be able to read that.
I see.
As I sat down.
So as you sat down, did you notice?
I could probably see that that was the message sent.
I see, okay. Right. So is that where you got the information about the fire originally being on the 4th floor?
Yes, it must be. Yeah.
Okay. Now, on page 6 of your statement, if you just go back to that, in the 3rd paragraph, and this may be jumping ahead in the night, you say, over the course of the night, I think I took something in the region of about 80 calls. I was later told. I do not really remember them. I remember one man I spoke to, a father of 5, say that the fire was coming in through the walls of his flat. I felt totally useless, as there was nothing I could do to help these people. I told him there was nothing I could do and he was better off with his family. I ended the call by saying I would make absolutely sure the crews knew where he was. It was just horrible. Now that's there in your statement. Again, we are having difficulty finding a record of this specific call. Can you help us now? Do you remember anything else about that call?
I think father of 5 is wrong. I think there were 5 people.
Right.
2 adults and 3 children, I think.
Right.
Maybe.
And do you remember roughly what sort of time in the night that was?
I think that was quite late on.
Quite late on. Okay. And do you remember whether the call he made to you, or the call you had, was this first call or a subsequent call?
No, I believe I would have gone over to Jason's board, station manager Olif, and the flat number was already up there.
It was already up there, so it was a later call.
I think so, I believe so, yes.
And have you any recollection as to roughly which floor it was in the tower? How high up?
No, I can't remember.
Right, okay. Do you remember whether you actually told him to leave, get out?
He said he could. I told him to get away from the fire. I think he was just blocked in by the fire, and he told him it was just coming through the walls. He had nowhere to go.
Right. Did you explore with him actually what the exit routes were like? So you could satisfy yourself that he genuinely...
It sounded like it was past any exit routes to me.
Right. Now, let's come back earlier into the night. We'll look at the first call you actually took from the tower itself, which is at 1:30:38. And I'd like to go, if I can, first of all, to the control report, page 26. And I'm going to do this with all of these I'm going to show you. And I'm not going to show you all 70, Mrs. Gotts, but I'm going to show you the summary first, and then we'll look at the transcript in part. This is at 1:30:38, and it says, CRO Gotts takes a call from a female caller who states she is in her neighbour's house on the 22nd floor of Grenfell Tower and they can smell smoke. CRO Gotts advises the caller to get fresh air from the window and confirms that the fire is on the 4th floor. The caller asks if they should stay in the flat, and CRO Gotts responds that she's unable to advise the caller but will let the crews know that the caller is on the 22nd floor. Call duration 1 minute 22 seconds. Now, the transcript for that is LFB 311. And we're just going to ask you one or two questions about the actual detail of that, if I may. We start with the first page, and this will become more familiar to you as we go through. These are LFB transcripts. At the top there, under event, or next to event, we can see the time of 01:30:38. It's the second number from the right. That's how we know it's that time. And that's the LFB time they've put on it. If we turn to page 2, you can see the text of the call. Fire brigade, hello, it's from Grenfell Tower, yeah. And 22nd floor, you're on the 22nd. And then caller, yes, and there's all smoke now. Yeah, we are. You need to get to the window and get some fresh air, okay? Yeah, I'll let them know you're up there. So can you make sure over speaking, like, do you know actually which floor it's a fire? There's a fire. And then you say it's a block, a flat on the 4th floor alight. Now just pausing there, that's the opening part of the discussion. You then go on the next page, page 3, if we just look at that quickly, to establish what floor it is. And halfway down the page, you see the caller says 22nd floor, 22nd, yeah, all right, okay. And then over speaking, and then we are there, all right, I'll let them know, thank you. And I'll come to the rest of it in a moment. But we don't see anywhere in this call you actually taking a number for the flat.
No, I don't.
Can you help us? Why is that?
I don't know.
Because this is quite early on. And
I don't know, I'm sorry.
Right. Going back to page 2, you're told, and we've just looked at it, a third of the way down, there's all smoke now. And you say you need to get to the window and get some fresh air. We don't, I think, see you exploring with the caller whether there's a way of safely getting out and getting into the exit routes. Is there a reason for that?
No, well, I thought the fire was still on the 4th floor.
Right.
So I thought, it's just maybe some smoke travelling up.
Okay, but you didn't explore the detail with the caller.
Well, I don't think she knew really.
Right. And when you say, as you do, as at the bottom of the page, the flat on the 4th floor is alight, what was the basis or source of that information?
Well, from the informative, I think.
Okay. Did you hear anything around you in the control room that might suggest that the fire had travelled higher up the building than the 4th floor?
I think I'd heard smoke mentioned, but not fire particularly.
Right. Okay. You then, if you look at the top of page 3, the caller says, yeah, well, our neighbour told us it's actually from somewhere, inaudible. And you say, oh, I see. Okay, yeah, well, we're there and I'll let them know you're on the 20th. But you've just got some smoke up there. You're okay. my question there is, when you say, oh, I see, what did you see? What did you understand the caller had told you?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I can't remember the call, so I don't know, I'm afraid.
Did you know or pick up from around you that Peter Duffy was on a call at the same time to a caller from flat 196? He'd taken the call 38 seconds earlier, which was next door, where the caller had told him that that flat was on fire.
No, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? No. If you had been told that a fire was on the 22nd floor, would it have made a difference to the advice that you then went on to give?
It may be, because that to me just sort of says she's got some smoke up there.
Yeah.
I didn't know the fire was up there at that point, I don't believe.
Right. Are you sure in your own mind that you fully understood what she was saying to you?
Maybe I didn't. I thought so at the time, maybe I didn't. From that I understand it was just some smoke travelled up there.
Yeah. I know it's difficult to recollect.
Yes, I can't really remember the call, so...
I was going to ask you, do you have any recollection of any communication difficulties, language difficulties, things like that?
No, I don't remember any problems like that.
Okay. And did the caller, to your mind, appear lucid and comprehensible?
Well, yes, I mean, by the sounds of that call, they sound as though they are, but again, I can't actually remember the call, okay. So...
Right. Now, it looks from this transcript also that you didn't get a number for the number of occupants in the flat.
No.
They didn't. Is there a reason for that?
No, I'm sorry, I don't know why.
Right. Now, you then go on to say, over the page, you're asked, do we stay in the flat? This is page 4. And your answer is, well, obviously I can't really advise you, but I'll let the fireman know you're there. Okay. What information do you think you were missing from the caller which meant that you couldn't advise them? What did you need?
I don't know about their escape route. That would be more hazardous. I don't know whether it's better for them to stay in the flat at that point with the smoke up there.
Yeah. But could you have asked them for that information so that you could have advised them?
Maybe, but she just sounds like she's saying there's some smoke up there. It might be worse smoke further down. You just don't know what you're sending them into.
No.
So from our end, it's very difficult to know, where the smoke is worse.
Yeah.
If you're better up there, you could send them down into smoke. It's just it's a hard thing to call. It really is a hard thing to call.
Yes. We see the extent to which you explored the thickness of smoke and the possible exit routes, which isn't a great deal. Is there a reason why you didn't press the caller?
No, maybe I should have done.
Okay.
It's very different looking at it here to listening to it on the night.
At this point, 1:30, were you aware of how serious the fire spread had become?
What make-up messages had we received then?
Well, we were at 20 at 1:29.
That's quite bad fire spread, I would assume.
Yes. And so putting that information next to the information you got and understood from this call...
yeah, I really can't answer your question, I'm afraid.
Right. Turning to the next call, which is at 1:38:37, we'll start with the control room report at page 37. Foot of the page. And this is a call, the summary of which reads as follows. CRO Gotts takes a call from a very calm male caller who reports a fire in Grenfell Tower and asks what to do because the fire is spreading. He asks if he should stay put because the fire is in the next door kitchen. The caller asks if the brigade is on site, and CRO confirms that there are lots of them and she will let the crews know that he is there. Caller says he's in flat 95 on the 12th floor and there are children in the flat. He is advised to try and get some fresh air from a window and block anywhere where smoke is coming from. And it's linked to another call at 1:26:58, and the duration of the call is 1 minute and 19 seconds. Now, we start off, I think, with this call, looking at page 19, if we can, of the short incident log, just to compare the detail of the call with the message. And at page 19, we can see that Sharon Darby at 1:40 and 40 seconds AEG, that's you, I think,
Yes.
create a service request. Service request created to CH4, that's channel 4,
Yes.
or RT4. G271, persons trapped in flat on 12th floor. That's the service request you created. You didn't, I think, add anything about smoke or fire on that floor. Is there a reason for that?
No, I don't know.
When you created that service request, did that mean that it went to Sharon Darby?
That's right, yes.
Okay. And we can see that at 1:45:15, just lower down the page, Sharon Darby creates that request as a service request completed. You see that? Persons trapped in flat on 12th floor unable to leave.
That means she successfully passed it over, and so
Yeah.
she's completed it.
Yeah. Does that mean that the extra information about fire on the floor and children in the flat wasn't passed over
No.
to the incident ground?
No, she would have passed what I sent to her.
Right. Would it have been important for the incident ground to know, so that they could, if they wanted to, prioritise calls? Would it be important for them to know that there was that they were trapped and that there were children involved?
Well, yes, it possibly would have done, but they want to rescue everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Now, going on in the control report, the next call is at page 45, at 1:43:19. This is where you take a call from flat 82 on the 11th floor. The caller has previously incident number 12826, called previously. The caller talks about her husband and states she has a daughter but is unclear if she's in the flat. The caller explains that this is her second call to the brigade and confirms that they cannot get out because of the smoke outside the door. The call lasts 1 minute and 21 seconds. We'll look at the transcript in a moment, but just looking at that summary, you're told they can't get out because of the smoke outside the door. Would that be an FSG call straight away then?
Yes.
Looking at that summary, would you need to ask for the number of people involved in the flat?
Well, it looks like there's 3, but...
Right. It looks like there's 3. Did you have an understanding of that from the call?
No, I can't remember the call, to be honest, so...
Right, well, let me show you the transcript so that we have the whole thing. This is transcript number 323. And you can see from that it's timed at 1:43:19. And on page 2, halfway down, you're told, I'm ringing from Grenfell Tower. I know you know, but there's smoke coming in my house now. So they're affected by smoke. And then you say, can you block up the bottom of the door, stop the smoke coming in? Yeah, we blocked the bottom of the door. Yeah, we've done all of that. Okay, please send someone, at least get me out the window way. Anyway, please, over speaking. What floor are you on? 82? They know I've rung already. Sorry, what floor? The 11th. The 11th, okay. Well, I can just let them know again. There's a few people caught in flats there. Can you get some fresh air from the window? And it continues on down the page. And at the bottom of the page, no, the stairs will be completely full of smoke now. And then over the top of page 4, they're filled with smoke, are they? Yeah. Okay, I'll let them know. And halfway down page 4, please can you find out, please, how long they're going to be? I need to get out, please, I've got a daughter. Okay, and you're on the 11th floor. It doesn't look as if you explored alternative escape routes with the caller.
No, I didn't think to do that.
No.
I didn't remember that action.
Now, you were told that the caller had a daughter. Did you pass those details to the incident ground straight away?
Either over to Jason, Station Manager Olif on his whiteboard,
Yeah.
or through the radio channels.
Right. Now, just look at the whiteboard. It's MET 000016906. Let's just get that up on the screen just to make sure we've traced this through. If we can have that the right way round. Great. Now that's 80. We're looking at 82. The very top, 11th. Looks like bed, front door, 2 adults, 1 child outside. So it looks as though the number of people have been obtained, but you don't know when that was passed over to the incident ground?
No.
Okay. Do you remember how Jason Olif got that information up on that whiteboard?
No, I didn't see.
Okay. Next call is at page 51 of the control report, 14749. Where you take a call from inside Grenfell Tower. Caller asks how they're going to get out. CRA GOTS confirms the floor number and the caller states they're on the 10th floor. The caller then repeatedly states they are going outside. The phone is handed to a young child who states there's smoke in the corridor, but other residents are leaving. The caller asks for advice on what to do, and CRO GOTS advises that they block the doors up and she will tell firefighters where they are. However, she's unable to advise the best thing as she's not there. CRO GOTS advises that the fire started on the 4th floor. Now, that's the summary. If we look at the transcript, this is number 330. And again, time is 014749, as we can see from the top right-hand corner. It's quite a quick call, so we can probably see the whole thing, but I just want to focus on 1 or 2 parts of it. On page 2, it starts, "Hello, fire brigade, please, we are still inside. How are we going to go out? What floor are you on? 10th floor, please." And it's Grenfell Tower. And it continues, but if one looks through the whole of that call, we don't see you getting the actual flat address anywhere. Is there a reason why you didn't do that?
No, just the speed of taking the calls up,
Right.
I would say.
And nor do we see you getting the number of persons in the
No.
flat either. Same again. Is that right? Is
Just
there a
the speed of knowing how many calls are waiting and just pressure of work, really.
Right. You can see straight away that they ask you how we're going to go out, and again, and I'm sorry these questions are becoming rather repetitive, but is there a reason why you didn't explore with these callers what the conditions in the escape route were?
Well, the thing is that they're on, so that one's on the 10th floor. The conditions on that floor could be very different to all the way down. So
Yes, exactly.
you know, we don't, from where I am and where they are, they don't know the conditions all the way down.
No.
It's a very difficult thing to call.
I understand. But is there a reason why with this call you didn't ask them to explore with you to see what, because the conditions could change depending on where they were in the building, whether there was actually an escape route?
Because I think I just felt I couldn't have stayed on the phone that long, maybe. There were so many calls waiting.
Right. Was it not important, though, given that they were telling you that they were essentially stuck, not to see with them whether they were actually stuck and could get out, or as opposed to taking them at their word?
I suppose I did rather take them at their word. I was still hoping the firefighters would get up to the 10th floor.
You get told about the conditions in the flat, and you give them some advice about blocking the smoke. And you say halfway down, or just below halfway, well, 3/4 of the way down page 2, well, it's up to you. Sorry, caller 1 says, we're going to go outside. And you say, well, it's up to you, I can't advise you to do that. And then you say, is there smoke all in the corridors? That's a question. And the caller 1 says, can't advise you to do that, can't advise. And then the operator says, I can't advise you, no, obviously I'm not there. Now, there seems from that to be a bit of confusion where you're actually asking, is there smoke in the corridor, and don't get an answer. Can I just ask, is there a reason why you didn't follow up on that question? Is there smoke in the corridors?
No, I can't remember the call, so sorry, I can't say.
No. Given that it was clearly an FSG call because they were trapped, well, let me ask you, do you accept that that was an FSG call because they said they were stuck?
They said they were stuck, yes.
And did that make it an FSG call?
Yes.
Yeah. So, given that, is there a reason why you didn't stay on the line with them until they were rescued?
No, perhaps I should have done, but again, there were so many calls coming in. We were just overwhelmed.
Right. Did you think to call a supervisor over and...
No, everybody was working flat out.
Right. And on page 4, you ask them just above halfway, no, so you're on the 10th, are you? Yes. And then you say, it was on the 4th. And then, it was on the 4th? Question. Operator, it was on the 4th it started, but I let them know you're there. By this stage, did you have any updated information about the spread of the fire and smoke up the building, or did you still think it was on the 4th?
I didn't have any update, no.
Okay.
We only had one informative, I think.
Yeah. Could you not hear other people in the control room taking calls from higher up the building? Or...
Yeah, smoke does travel
yes.
throughout a building. Not necessarily that the fire has spread everywhere. The smoke can travel.
Now, the next call is to control report 55, page 55. Where you answer a call at 1:54:23. And the summary is short. CRO Gotts takes a call from a female caller in flat 205 on the 23rd floor who states that the fire is starting to rise and they have nowhere to go. The caller explains that the crew's know already, but the flat is now full of smoke and there are 7 of them in there. The caller says that the fire is going to come through the window and they do not know what to do. CRO Gotts checks with the caller that they cannot get out of the flat and says she will let the crews know urgently. The transcript is at LFB 333. It's a very short call. Looking at the top right, it's 01:54:23 as we can see. So we'll just have it there. It looks as if this wasn't the first call from flat 205. Did you know that, do you think, when you took this call?
Oh, I can't remember.
Right. In general terms, just standing back from the detail of this call, how would you normally manage a change of information about a flat that had already come in and was in the system, and where the details had already been passed over to the incident ground?
We were so overwhelmed that we all just did our very best.
Yeah.
I don't know that updates as such were passed. I don't know that information, if they were passed updates.
How would you normally, if there is a normal, convey the development of the information about a particular call to the incident ground?
And if we had only a manageable amount of calls coming in, it's a very different situation. They can be updated continually. Right. But on that night, it just was not possible.
Now, was this the first occasion when you realised that the fire was no longer contained on the 4th floor, but was high up in the building, or rising up the building?
Oh, I can't say, to be definitely honest.
Now, they say on page 2, 2/3 of the way down, we're stuck. You see that? The caller says, there's no way, the flat's already full of smoke, can't go out well where we're stuck. Operator knows. So we're telling them again and again where the people are, and they're trying to send people up. Okay, but the fire's coming up to the floor, what are we going to do? And you ask, the fire's coming through the door, and the answer is that it's going to come through the window in a second. And in the end, you go on to say, I'll let them know. And halfway down page 3, you say, I can just let them know that you're there. They know we're here. We just need someone to hurry and come. Yeah, I'll reinforce that for you. Please, please. The urgency, that's flat 105. Please, yes. Flat 205. Sorry, 205. I misread that. Please, yes. Flat 205. Yeah. Yeah. What floor? 23rd, right at the top. The 23rd. Okay, I'll let them know. All right. Yeah. Okay. Please. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. Now, what would you do to let the crews know urgently, and that there was an urgency about this particular call? What did you do?
I think I just checked that we had the information over on the whiteboards.
Right. Was there a quicker way of getting the crews to know that there was a very, very urgent call?
No, that was the quickest way for us.
Right. Having told the occupants of flat 205 that you would reinforce the urgency with the crews, what did you actually do to do that? Do you remember?
Just went over and checked that the further information had been sent.
Right. And had it?
I passed it over, whether, as far as I'm aware, yes.
Right. The next call is at 2:15:07, which is control report page 73. Page 73, and this is the call at 02:15:07. I'll just read the summary. CRO Gotts takes a call from a male caller who begins by apologising for calling again, but reports being very scared and states that they are on the 12th floor. He explains that when they open the front door, there is a lot of smoke, and CRO Gotts says that she's unable to advise, but if the caller thinks that it's safe to try and leave, then that's their choice. However, normally the brigade would suggest blocking up anywhere that smoke can get in. CRO Gotts reassures the caller that the brigade is there and will come and find them. The caller states that they can't breathe, so CRO Gotts asks if there's a window in the flat that might provide some fresh air. The caller states that there are fireballs falling past the window and that there are 3 people in the flat. CRO Gotts suggests they try and block it up a bit more or go to the window to get some fresh air if they are unable to get out. CRO Gotts then confirms that the crews are aware that they are on the 12th floor. Call duration 3 minutes to 39 seconds. And the reference for that is LFB 346, which is the transcript. Just before we go to the transcript, you're just looking at the summary. You're told by the caller that the fire is in a flat. Let me start that question again. You're told that the caller is in a flat on the 12th floor, but it looks as if you don't seek to get the flat number from the caller. Again, is there a reason for that?
No.
Okay. Now, we've seen a number of calls where you didn't do that. Just going back to your statement on page 7, you say in the 5th line down, I constantly made sure I had the flat numbers to pass over to the command unit. Looking at the calls we've looked at, do you think that's not...
No, it's not really...
That's not correct.
Correct in the statement, is it? No.
Okay, thank you. Now, can I just show you the transcript of that call? Which is 346. halfway down page 2, you, having got the floor, you say, okay, I mean, is it that there's lots of smoke outside your place as well? Caller, several inaudible words. When you go outside the door, you can see just smoke and outside. I mean, is it, I can't advise you, you say. If you think it's safe to try and leave, it's up to you. But I would, over speaking, and then normally we say block up where the smoke's coming in. Now, just pausing there, you're told there's smoke outside. We don't see you, again, it's the same question, we don't see you exploring with this caller means of escape, whether actually the smoke is something that he could get or she could get through. Why is that?
I didn't remember about the further means of escape.
It's the same question, same answer again, is it? Right. And then you say at the top of page 3, yes, the firemen are there, they know you're there, they're going to come and find you, okay, there's just lots of flaws, isn't there? That's the trouble. Did you have any specific information to be able to assure that caller that the crews actually knew that that caller was there and awaiting rescue?
Well, I think they knew there were people trapped on that floor, didn't they?
So, but you didn't have any updated information,
No.
did you, to be able to tell him that? Now, halfway down page 5, the caller says, fireballs, fireballs, there's fireballs, they're falling down on us. What's falling down? Fireballs. And you say, fireballs are falling down. What, past your window? Yeah. Oh, you'll have to keep away from that. You did say you had a window, and you go on to explore that. On this fireballs question, what impression did you get of the fire at this point, when the caller told you there were fireballs falling down outside?
I had no idea what that could be.
Right. Did you relay that information onto anybody else in the control room, that there were fireballs falling down?
No.
Right. Is there a reason why you didn't do that?
I didn't. I mean, they'd have seen it on scene, presumably, if there's fireballs falling down. That was more, something they would know on scene. I thought that was enough information, really.
Right.
I didn't think it would make any difference to anybody in the control room that there were fireballs.
Okay. Just going back to page 3, after you give them the assurance that the crews know you're there, at the top of the page, you're asked by the caller, is it all right? And you say, pardon, is it all going well? And you say, I can't hear what you're saying. Is the fire being something? Yeah, they're putting the fire out, they're trying to put the fire out. Okay, okay. What information did you have to be able to answer his question, is it all going well, with what you tell him? Yeah, they're putting the fire out, they're trying to put the fire out. What information did you have from the fireground about that?
No, it's just an expectation with experienced fire crews on scene, really.
Right. So the assurance that you gave him, were you satisfied in your own mind that it was reliable?
I knew the firefighters would be doing their best.
Right. Is that quite the same thing as saying they're putting the fire out?
Maybe not, but that's all I could say at the time.
Okay. Did you have any thoughts in your own head about whether this fire could be tackled at all by this stage?
I'm not a firefighter. I've no idea of the process of it all.
We see a number of these assurances being given by you and other control room operators at the time. And my question really is, how could you be sure to give these assurances where you didn't have any solid information back from the fireground?
Because that's just what we do as a service, do our best to save life, extinguish fires and rescue people.
Yes. Do you know or have a recollection of giving assurances to people which which didn't turn out to be right, which meant that they stayed in their flats longer than they should have done?
No, I don't know.
You don't know. Can I turn to a different call, which is you taking a call from the London Ambulance Service? This is Control Report 54, page 54, at page 1, sorry, at 152.56. So page 54. At 152.56. CRO GOTS takes a call from the London Ambulance Service who inform her that they're making the Grenfell Tower fire a significant incident. Do you have a recollection of that?
No.
Okay. Did you pass that information on to anyone, that the LAS were making the Grenfell Tower a significant incident?
I wouldn't have thought so, no.
Why is that?
We would go by our own, if we declare it ourselves a major incident, that's what we'd act upon. The ambulance service made it significant. It was already major, I presume, from our point of view. So I think nearly everything from the London Fire Brigade was attending anyway. So.
Right. Can I ask you to look then at the second hour ORR, which is LFB 4828, page 139. And I want to just show you a call taken at 020925. And it says CRO GOTS takes a call at brigade control from the MPS control room reporting that they have received an abandoned call from a female who is trapped with her son in flat 115 and states that she does not know where the exits are. The MPS CRO gives a CAD reference number of 543. The MPS CRO informs CRO GOTS that his supervisor is reporting that they're getting lots of calls from people trapped in the building and asks if there is any advice that they can give to callers. CRO GOTS states to close the windows, block up doors, but if windows offer air, then open them. The MPS confirm that the brigade are not directing people to fire exits. The CRO GOTS explains they do not know where the exits are, and that she has spoken to a few people who have left but have had to return to their flats because of the amount of smoke. CRO GOTS explains that as far as unpredictable, the brigade do not generally tell people to leave, but if they think they can leave safely, then they should do so. The MPS CRO asks CRO GOTS if she can arrange for the brigade CRO supervisor to speak to the MPS supervisor in the MPS control room. CRO GOTS says she will try, but says it's very busy at the moment. First of all, do you have any independent recollection of that call?
No, I don't.
I've just shown you. Now, you're being asked by the Met for what safety advice to pass on. And you say you don't know where the fire exits are. This is now 2:12, so well over an hour into this escalating incident. Is it right, really, that you didn't know, even by this point, that there was only a single exit route out of the building down the main stairs, or the only stairs?
No, I didn't, no.
You didn't? Even an hour into this incident, you didn't know that?
No.
Okay. We don't see you or anybody else in the control room pressing the command unit for updated information as to what the conditions were in the stairs and lobbies at different levels. Is that something you thought of doing at this stage when you were asked by the Met as to what advice to give callers?
No, it's not something I would have thought of doing.
Do you know whether anybody else did?
No, I don't know.
Right. Did you consult with a supervisor in the room or anybody in the room about what advice to give the Met when they asked?
No, I can't remember. I would have thought I would have said to someone that the Met wanted information, but I can't remember if I did or not. Right. Under normal circumstances, I would have done, but I can't remember if I did on that occasion.
Right. Now, we know that Group Manager Welch declared the fire a major incident at 2:07 or so, round about then. Did you know that at that time, or round about that time?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Would you have been able to see it on the vision log?
Yes, if I had time to look at it.
Right.
I didn't go through the log. If it was up on the service request, I may have noticed it. Sharon possibly would have shouted that out.
Right.
But again, I don't know. If I was busy on something else, I might not have heard.
Do you have any recollection of changing your advice or approach?
No, I can't.
As
No,
a
not
res-
really.
as a
I
result
can't
of-
really remember the night at all, to be fair.
Right. Now, can I turn to a slightly different topic, which is the change in the stay put advice? If you go to your witness statement at page 7, Mrs. Scotts, you say in the first main paragraph there, initially the advice to give residence was to remain. I remember at some point in the night someone shouts that the advice was to get out. I do not know what time this was said. On the transcripts we've seen, you were in fact telling people to get out if they felt they could do so safely. So why did you do that if the advice was, as you've said, to remain?
Sorry, I was telling people to get out if they could do so safely.
Well, we've seen a number of transcripts
Yes,
where you in various different ways. You say, well, I can't really advise you, or, if you can get out, get out. But here you say initially the advice to give residence was to remain. Does that mean that you weren't telling people to remain, or you were?
Initially it was, wasn't it? Before Make Pumps 25.
Right.
For me.
I see. So initially means right at the very start, and it
Yes.
changed soon after that.
Only for me. I don't know what everybody else was.
Can I just ask, are you speaking here about what you were saying to people or what the standard advice
The
was?
standard, really, I think.
I see. Okay. Now, still on page 7 of your statement, you state in the second paragraph at the end, you say, by that point in the night, FSG advice was pointless. What point in the night are you referring to there?
Much later on, I think.
Right.
Much later on.
When you say much later, was that after the advice had changed from
No,
stay put
no,
to get
I
out?
mean much later on, I
Well,
think.
after dawn, do you think?
Possibly, yes. Yeah.
Right. Could you see dawn? Did you have any exterior windows so you could see the...
Yes.
You did? Right.
Yeah. I don't remember, all of a sudden we all realised it was light.
Right. Now, the control debrief notes that we looked at before say, and I don't necessarily need to take you back to that, say that the advice was changed at 2:35 a.m. Does that accord with your recollection?
No, I've no idea.
You've no idea. Do you remember whether the change in stay put advice was communicated to you?
I just remember somebody saying, tell them to get us out.
Was it told to you personally?
I thought someone just walked past me and said it. I'm not sure if
Do
it
you
said to me directly or
Yes.
if it was a general announcement.
Yes. And do you know who that was? Do you remember who that was?
Not 100%, no.
Did anybody come up to you with a piece of paper saying, change the advice to stay put?
No pieces of paper, no.
You're sure about that?
I don't think so.
Right. Did anybody advise you as to what to call, what to tell the callers?
I don't remember that happening.
Right. Do you remember being told to give advice to put wet towels over mouth, hold hands, stay together, get out, could be last
No,
chance?
I can't remember that. But
Right. Okay. And just, sorry to press the point, do you remember ever being told to tell people to get out at all costs or come what may, or it could be their last chance?
I can't remember.
Right. Do you remember being told that firefighters were having any kind of difficulty rescuing people or getting to people above a particular floor?
I think I heard someone say that they're not going to get to them all, something along those lines.
Do you
But I
remember
don't know
roughly?
who said that.
Right. Do you remember roughly when that was?
No idea.
Now, let me just put one or two calls to you. Control report, page 96. which is a call you took at 2:42:14. With persons in flat 183 on the 18th floor. And if we can get the summary up, it's 2:42:14. CRO Gotts takes a call from a male caller who asks for a helicopter to rescue them as they're going to die. He states that there are 9 people in flat 153 on the 18th floor and that 152 is alight. CRO Gotts asks if the caller can move away from the side of the flat next to 152 and suggests that the caller blocks up where the smoke is coming in. The caller states that they are trying, but no one is helping them and that they need to be evacuated. The caller says that smoke is coming into the flat, and CRO Gotts states that if they cannot leave, then they will need to block up the smoke, need to block up where the smoke is coming in from. CRO Gotts explains that she will pass the information to the crews. The caller says thank you and goes off the line. Call duration 3 minutes 38 seconds. Noting the timestamp of 2:42:14, Ms. Gotts, and I know it's difficult, Mrs. Gotts, to remember. Do you know if by this time you'd been told about the change to the stay put advice?
No, I don't. I don't know when I was told.
You find out that they're in flat 153 and there are 9 of them, and that 152 is on fire, and you also find out that nobody is trying to evacuate them. And then you discover that they're on the 18th floor. Is there a reason why you didn't tell them to get out at all costs, or they might die?
No, I can only assume that it sounded to me as if they couldn't, you know.
Right. Did you know by this time that crews were having difficulty getting above the 15th floor?
No, I didn't know.
You didn't. You say, we see this from the summary, that you explain that you will pass information to the crews. What did you have in mind that you were going to do in order to alert the crews to the situation?
Well, just to go over and check that the information had gone over.
Right. Did you do that?
Yes, all my calls I went and checked that the information went over.
Right. How did you check?
Well, went over to the station manager, made sure all these calls had gone through to the command unit.
Right. What did you look at to check?
His whiteboard and spoke to him.
Right.
He was on the phone a lot as well, you know, at the same time.
Did you speak to Jason Earliff while he was on the call to reinforce the urgency of
I can't remember.
these calls? Because you said you spoke to him, so...
Well, I did speak to him during the night, but whether about that specific one or not,
No,
I
but
don't know.
in general terms, did you interrupt his call or speak to him while he was on the phone?
Well, no, not interrupt his calls exactly,
Right.
but...
Okay. And when you... yeah. Did you have any idea at this point, or any idea at this point, as to how realistic it was that crews would be able to go up to the 18th floor? This is now 2:42.
No, not definite knowledge that they weren't going to get up there.
Right. So again, was this an assumption that they would do all they could?
Yes, they always do.
Now, if I can... Now, I'm looking at the time, Mr. Chairman, and I regret to say I'm not quite finished. I have a few questions to ask, but I'm not sure that we're going to finish within 5 minutes.
Well, what's a realistic estimate?
I think probably about 15 or 20 minutes more, and then there may be some further questions I may need to
It's quite a long time.
think of. I know, I'm anxious not to ask you to sit late. It may be.
No, but you see, it may well be that Mrs. Gotts has other things scheduled for tomorrow.
Well, shall we find out?
Mrs. Gotts, as you've heard, Council hasn't quite finished asking you questions. Now, the alternatives are that we have a few minutes break, because you've been giving evidence for another hour or so without a break. So we have a short break, and then we continue for another 20 minutes and finish your evidence. Well, let's be perhaps more realistic, half an hour, and we finish your evidence tonight. The alternative is that we have to ask you to come back tomorrow. Do you have a personal preference?
I'd rather finish tonight if that's okay.
I'm not surprised to hear you say that. Right.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in your hands. I personally prefer to finish tonight, but I want to make
Well,
sure
I'm sure.
that
I think we probably
this
all
witness,
would.
who's an important witness,
But
this
I
is just an
think
important
this
witness for lots of people.
needs a bit of a break now.
Yeah, right.
So we'll have a 5-minute break
Okay.
now. Would you like to go with the usher?
Okay.
And of course not talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out of the room. Could you come back 25 to or just after? All right, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Millett, I'm prepared to sit on a bit, but I think that we are reaching that time of the day when
Yes.
everyone's concentration is beginning to be a bit taxed.
Well, I agree, and that's why I was suggesting a rising now, but
no.
if it's convenient, well, it's obviously important that the witness is comfortable, we get the best
Well,
evidence
she's getting
from
a
the
bit of
witness.
a break now, but what I want to know from you is, you said 15 to 20 minutes.
Well, if I can be 15 minutes, then that will allow a little bit of time, but I don't want to rush
No,
the
nor do I.
process.
But on
So,
the other hand, I think in fairness to everyone, we ought to have some sort
Very
of
well.
cut-off point tonight,
yeah,
and people can work to it. And I think that's going to be 5 o'clock.
very good.
Is that all right? Can you manage that?
Yes, absolutely.
And others who may
see what we
obviously
get.
want to consider about supplementary questions will obviously go through the usual process, give you a chance to raise them with Mr. Millett. But we've all got to work within a sensible deadline this evening, I think. All right, so I'm going to sit again at 25 to or very shortly after,
Very good, thank you.
and we'll regard 5 o'clock as a deadline. All right, thank you. All right. All right, Mrs. Gotts? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mrs. Gotts, thank you for coming back to us. I'm just going to ask you one or two questions on one or two more calls. First, could you please go to page 57 of the control report? Which is earlier on in the night, a little bit earlier on in the night than where we got to. At 1:57:45, you take a call from a caller who reports that they've tried to get out, but it's full of smoke and they cannot breathe. CRO Gotts asks the caller to confirm they cannot get out several times, which the caller confirms repeatedly. CRO Gotts then suggests that the caller block the doors to try to stop the smoke from getting in and double checks that the caller cannot leave the flat. She says the best thing to do is to stay where he is and try and block the smoke. CRO Gotts asks the flat number and the caller states that it's flat 92, which is on the 12th floor. CRO Gotts then confirms that this message will be passed over and the brigade will get to them as soon as they can. And the call lasts 2 minutes 14 seconds. Do you remember this call particularly?
No.
Okay. Do you remember taking a call from a child at any point?
No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
Right. You've no recollection of taking a call from anybody who was a child or said they were a child?
No, I don't remember that.
Right. Next page is page 106 in the same report. Now, this is a call at 2:51:38, where you make a call to a number given by Surrey FRS at 2:48:49. We don't need to see that. A male answers the phone and is very distressed and shouts that the flames are coming from next door. CRO Gotts tells him to cover himself with wet towels and get out. He asks if she is serious and states that he's 67 years of age. CRO Gotts asks if a neighbour can help him, but the caller says there's no one up there and the call cuts off. Did you pass information on to Jason Oliffe at the whiteboard and therefore onto the incident ground that this was a caller who was elderly and therefore unable himself to exit without assistance?
No, I don't remember saying about anybody being elderly.
Right. At all during the night?
I don't remember that call. I don't.
Generally speaking, do you remember taking calls from people who were unable to exit without assistance because of their age or other difficulties?
No, I don't remember being told that. I don't remember.
Okay. Right. On the similar theme, if I can ask you to go back to the call we looked at earlier at 1:54 from flat 205. You remember we looked at that. That's transcript 333. We looked at this earlier on. Perhaps it's better just to go back to the transcript so you've got it in front of you. There it is. Yes, there it is. And you're told in the first third of that page, yeah, we're in the building, everyone knows we're in 205, there's 7 of us here, the fire's starting to rise to 205 now, and we've got nowhere to go. And then 2/3 of the way down the page, or halfway down the page, you're told, we're stuck. Caller, there's no way, the flat's already full of smoke, can't go out, we're stuck. Now, we've seen that you didn't explore means of access with them. Did you when people told you that they were stuck, did you think at the time that it was important to establish why they were stuck?
No, because of the amount of calls, the fact that they were stuck is all I needed to know, I felt at the time.
Right. Can people be stuck for the purposes of FSG for a number of reasons, not just the conditions, but also because of their own mobility issues or age or matters of that nature?
No, I don't really know. I didn't explore that, as you know, but I assumed he just meant, as I say, they normally mention that themselves.
Yes. Was it, in these circumstances, was it relevant or important to establish with the callers whether it was mobility issues or age, matters of that nature, which were causing them to be stuck?
Maybe it could have been, but the amount of calls and the speed at which we were working was just an immense workload.
Right.
Maybe we could have explored it more, but I'm afraid I didn't.
Now, coming back to the timing of the stay put advice, I'd like you to look, please, at the same report, control report, page 102. And at the foot of that page, you can see a call at 2:48:49. You take a call from Surrey FRS, who have had another call from the daughter-in-law of a resident who's trapped on the 22nd floor. The Surrey CRO passes the mobile phone number of the resident and asks if CRO Gotts could give him a ring. CRO Gotts confirms that we have just been told to tell people to put wet cloths over their mouths and try to get out, and the Surrey CRO responds by explaining that the resident is 70 years old. Incident number, and then call duration 1 minute 43 seconds. Now, it's a timing question I'm after. You say that we have just been told to tell people to put wet cloths over their mouths and try to get out. And the time there is 2:48:41. Can we be sure, therefore, that by that time, at the latest, you had been told, you personally knew about the change in advice?
Yes, I must have been.
Okay. Did you know if Surrey was aware of the change in advice already before you told them about that?
No, I don't know. I don't know.
Then let's look at another call you took after that, some 7 minutes later, page 239 of the second hour ORR transcript this time. So not the control report, but the second hour ORR at 4828, page 239. Here's 239. And this is at 2:55:38, so bottom of the page. CRO Gotts takes a call from a male caller in flat 183 on the 21st floor, who states that they cannot get out because it's too smoky. CRO Gotts says that they need to put wet towels over themselves and leave the flat, but the caller explains that they cannot. CRO Gotts then asks if they can block up where the smoke is coming in or get to a window that can provide fresh air, and the caller states that that is what they're doing, but there are 3 kids, 3 adults and 1 heavily pregnant wife. CRO Gotts confirms and states that she will let the crews know. Call duration 1 minute 17 seconds. Now, my question is, having shown you the summary, Mrs. Gotts, given that you'd been told by 2:47, as we've just seen, to tell the occupants to get out, can you help us with why you told these callers, once they'd said they couldn't get out, to block up the smoke or where the smoke was coming in, instead of spelling out to them that they must make all efforts at all costs to leave?
Well, I think I took them at their word that they explained they cannot get out.
You took them at their word. You didn't seek to.
No, I maybe should have repeated it again.
Did you understand fully what the effect of the change in advice was that you were supposed to pass on to callers? That they must get out. It's their only chance.
Yes, I should have said it more forcefully, maybe.
Did you seek help or advice from a supervisor as to how to handle this call, given that the advice was get them out, tell them to get out, but they were telling you they couldn't?
I'd explained what they needed to do, and they said they couldn't. I took them at their word. The fact that they couldn't,
right.
You know, I understood them to know the situation outside better than me. I'm afraid.
And by that time, did you know that, or were you told that crews weren't accessing the higher floors, for example, above the 15th floor?
No, I don't know if we were told that.
And again, same question as before. When you told them that you would let the firemen know, what did you have in mind that you were going to do?
Checking that the information had been passed over.
Right. Did you? Did you pass those?
I checked everything
Right.
had gone over.
And who did you check that
Well,
with?
with Station Manager Olive.
Right. Now, there's a call, turning to a later call, a call at 3:08:56 from flat 193 on the 22nd floor. And can I take you to that summary on page 22 of the control, 122 on the control report? At the top of the page, this is the summary, and we'll look at the transcript. At the top of the page, CRO GOTS, it says, takes a call from a caller in flat 193 on the 22nd floor, reporting that they are burning. The caller asks if they can escape through a big window on a helicopter, and CRO GOTS explains the brigade is sending big ladders. The caller says they can get out if CRO GOTS sends a helicopter, or the 20 people will die. And CRO GOTS tells the caller that she will let the crews know. The caller keeps screaming and shouting. CRO GOTS repeatedly tries to get the caller to leave the building, covering themselves with wet towels. Now, I'd like just to look at parts of the transcript with you. It's LFB 406. And as you can see from the top right, it's a call at 03:08:56. The transcript runs to some 6 pages or so, just over 6 pages. If I can show you page 2 first of all. You're asked a third of the way down, can we escape to a helicopter to leave? And then there is, and then, so are you able to get some air from where there's no, the side where there's no fire? No, nobody, something, inaudible words, sorry. Several inaudible words, helicopter. I can see the helicopter. Can we escape from the helicopter, please? No, well, we're coming up to you inside. They're sending, some further big ladders. Okay. Sorry, yes, we can. They're sending more ladders. So what flat number are you in? What? 193, 193. From the window we can escape. Can you send us the helicopter, please? Okay, what floor are you on? And there's a discussion about the floor. Now, just on that exchange, big ladders were coming. Did you have any information in your hands when you took this call that the LFB was actually sending big ladders which would be able to access this high floor?
No, I don't know why I said that.
Right. So does that mean that you didn't have a basis for telling them that they were?
No, I'm afraid not, no.
Right. At the time of this call, so it is 3:08, the advice to trapped residents had been changed to immediate evacuation. Did you know whether this family had previously been given any advice to evacuate?
No, I didn't know.
You didn't. Did you consider the impact that telling these callers that ladders were being brought would have on any earlier advice which might have been given to get out?
No.
Now, we've seen a little bit of a discussion about helicopters. Just continuing on page 3, top of the page, I've just shown you that you're asked, can you send us the helicopter, please? Okay, you say, what floor are you on? And then you discuss the floor, 22nd floor. Okay, I'll let them know. And then you say, if you need that, okay. But if you're sure you can't get out the other way, yeah. And then there's discussion about towels. And then at the bottom of page 4, helicopter, 20 people are dying, please. And then there's further discussion on page 5. And then on page 6, after they're sending more ladders, but in the meantime, try and soak all your towels, and then in the middle of the page, the caller says, yes, yes, if you send a helicopter, we can escape. And you say, okay, all right, well, I'll pass that over, please, to let them know where you are, okay. Now, having seen all or most of the transcript, the last words or discussion about helicopter are, if you send a helicopter, we can escape, okay, all right, well, I'll pass that over. Did you mean to leave them with an impression that the helicopter would come and save them?
Not really, no, I don't know.
What did you actually think would happen with a helicopter? Whether the helicopter rescue was actually realistic?
Well, I didn't know. I assumed it wasn't going to, because it tends to fan the flames, so...
Right. Is there a reason why you didn't tell these callers, look, you're not going to be rescued by a helicopter, so forget that, you've got to get out?
I don't know. I suppose I just didn't want to send them in too much of a panic, but because they seemed to think that was their only way. But maybe I should have pressed more with the wet towels.
Right. Mrs. Goltz, thank you. You've been extremely patient with my questions. I have no more questions for this witness, Mr. Chairman.
Well, do we need to take a few minutes
I
to
think
check that?
it'd be sensible to do that.
I think so. Mrs. Gotts, it's just possible there may be one or two more questions.
Okay.
So I'll rise for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll get you back and see whether there are questions or not.
Okay.
All right, if you'd like to go to the usher, please. Mr. Minutes, if I say no more than 5 minutes, you'll understand that if it's less, I shall be pleased.
Very good.
Thank you, Mrs. Gotts. I don't know whether there are more questions.
There are a couple more.
Yes.
They're, I hope, pretty short. First of all, can I ask you to be shown, please, page 7 of your witness statement? And in the middle of the page, at the end of the paragraph, you say, I also remember there was a red phone that rang incessantly. I think it was BT advising us there were calls outstanding. You say you think it was BT. Can I just ask you, this red phone, where does it sit in the control room?
It sat, I think it was like between Debbie Real and Alex Norman.
Right, and do you know what it does normally?
I've asked since because the noise was terrible.
Right.
And I think it's the BT critical line.
BT critical line.
But it was ringing all the time.
Did you know that on the night, or was it?
No, it was just awful.
Right. And you say it rang incessantly. Did people ever answer it?
I believe they did when they were free.
Right. Did you see that for yourself?
No, I wasn't really looking at what everyone was doing.
Okay. You say it rang incessantly all night. Does it mean, was it answered incessantly all night, or did it
Well,
ring and ring
yes,
and ring?
it was answered, but it was having to ring quite a while because everybody was
Right.
really busy.
And whose responsibility was it to answer the BT?
One of the
red phone?
supervisors.
Right. Did you? And you didn't see who that was?
No.
Right. Now, can I just ask you then about two calls, one at 3:12:56 and one at 3:33:46, which is in the control room report we've got at pages 124 and 137. I'll take the first one because it's probably the simplest. Page 124. And at 3:12:56, you take a call from a male caller in flat 133 on the 16th floor. There's a smoke alarm audible in the background. CRO Gotts asks if he's tried to get out. The caller says he's nearly fainting. CRO Gotts repeats the advice to cover themselves with wet towels and get out. CRO Gotts keeps trying to encourage him to leave and asks who he's with. Caller replies that he's in the flat with his wife. The caller is struggling to breathe and says they've tried to leave twice, and CRO Gotts asks if he's blocked everything up. CRO Gotts says she will tell the crews, but repeats the advice to leave. At that stage, 3:12, that's long, or some time after the stay put advice had changed. Did you believe at that time that the firefighters could actually get to the 16th floor?
I didn't know.
You didn't know?
No.
Did you think that at that stage rescue from the 16th floor was unlikely at best?
I didn't know.
You didn't know.
To be fair.
Was it obvious to you that you should have told him that he's got to get out at all costs? Or they had to get out at all costs?
Well, I mean, I have told him a few times to cover the certain.
Yeah. Did you... Now, we've had some evidence from Peter Dudley last week that he was telling people after 2:42, and there are a number of instances, that he was giving very clear advice to get out in his way. Did you hear him do that? Did you hear him tell callers assertively that, come what may, they had to leave?
No.
You didn't? Right. Yeah. Mrs. Gotts, I have no further questions for you. Those are all the further questions I had. It only remains for me to thank you very much for enduring my questions and assisting the inquiry. We're very, very grateful to you. And I'm sorry that we've kept you late.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming, Mrs. Gotts. Just a minute, so I'm sorry we've kept you and everybody else rather late this evening, but it's been very important to hear your evidence. So thank you for coming. All right? You're free to go. Well, I'm sorry to have kept you all even later than I said I would, but that's the end for today, and we'll resume at 10 o'clock tomorrow.
10 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you.